I never thought that missing one flight could change my whole life. That Friday evening, Chicago O'Hare Airport was full of chaos as usual. Travelers dragged heavy suitcases, families said quick goodbyes, and busy businessmen kept tapping on their phones. I was one of them, running through the terminal like my life depended on it. Holding tightly to my boarding pass for the last flight to Indianapolis. My mother was turning 70, and I had promised her I would be there for the family dinner. She had reminded me all week over the phone. But when I finally reached the gate, the doors were already closed. I stood there, out of breath, staring at the locked jet bridge, as if my hope alone could make it open. But the plane was already leaving, and with it went my chance to keep my promise. My heart sank. I felt like a failure. 70 is an important milestone, and I couldn't even make it home on time. I wanted to cry, to scream, to let out the frustration building inside me, but instead, I froze. I held tightly to my suitcase handle, while the bright airport lights buzzed loudly above me. That was when I saw her. She was standing a little apart from the crowd, near one of the vending machines. She was an older woman, small and weak-looking, wrapped in a long patterned shawl that did not match the modern setting of the airport. Her hair was silver and tied loosely in a braid, but her eyes were sharp, far too sharp for someone her age. She was watching me closely, as if she had been waiting only for me. I tried to ignore her. The last thing I needed was a stranger coming up to me when I was already close to tears. But as I pulled my suitcase and started toward the escalator, she suddenly stepped right in front of me. Her voice was low, careful, and carried a faint Eastern European accent. "You missed your flight," she said softly, almost as if she were accusing me. I froze in surprise. "Excuse me?" I said. She tilted her head and studied me, as though she could read every secret written on my face. Then slowly she reached into her shawl and pulled something out. Under the harsh airport lights, it shone a silver needle. She held it out toward me with both hands, her face serious. "Take this," she whispered. "Check your husband and you will see the truth." For a moment, I could only stare at her, my mind racing to understand what was happening. My husband? What truth? I asked. The word sounded foolish, even a little frightening. A needle. Who gives a stranger a needle in the middle of an airport? I wanted to laugh at her, to walk away and forget this strange encounter, but something in her eyes stopped me. There was no joke in them, no trick, only complete certainty. "I think you've got the wrong person," I said. My voice shook even though I tried to stay calm. "I don't know what you mean." She didn't argue. She simply pushed the needle closer to me. Her hand was steady, much steadier than I expected for someone her age. "You'll know soon enough," she said. "Don't ignore it." I should have refused. I should have called security or at least walked away. But I didn't. My heart was pounding hard. Yet I slowly reached out and closed my fingers around the cold silver dot. It was heavier than I thought, and the icy touch of the metal sent a chill through my hand. When I looked up again, she was gone. No sound of footsteps, no trace of her in the crowd. She had vanished as if she had never been there at all. I stood alone in the busy terminal, clutching the needle, my mind full of questions. I told myself it was nonsense, that I was tired, emotional, and vulnerable. And yet, deep inside, I felt something stir, a heavy feeling of fear I could not shake off. I didn't know it then, but that silver needle would destroy everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my husband, and the life we had built together. The taxi ride back to the suburbs felt endless. The city lights outside blurred past the window like streaks of neon on black canvas. My suitcase sat beside me, but my thoughts were far away. I couldn't stop replaying the scene at O'Hare, the strange old woman, her sharp accent, her warning, and the silver needle now hidden deep in my purse. I told myself it was ridiculous. I was a grown woman, not someone who believed in omens or the strange warnings of fortune tellers, and yet her words echoed in my ears. Check your husband and you'll see the truth. 15 years of marriage. 15 years with David Miller. From the outside, people thought we had the perfect life. A comfortable home in a quiet neighborhood outside. Chicago. 2 steady careers, vacations whenever we could afford them, dinners with friends. Asterisk. But beneath the surface, cracks had been forming for years, arguments that never fully resolved. David's long nights at the office. His phone calls he always took in another room. The way he seemed distant even when we sat side by side on the couch. I told myself it was just the strain of adulthood, that every marriage carried its weight. Still, something inside me knew the foundation wasn't as solid as I pretended. By the time the taxi turned onto our street, my stomach was twisted into knots. The familiar row of townhouses stood in the glow of street lamps, looking peaceful. Almost too peaceful. I paid the driver, dragged my suitcase up the front steps, and unlocked the door as quietly as I could. The house smelled faintly of cologne and expensive whiskey, David's favorites. I was about to call his name when voices drifted from the living room. I froze, the handle of my suitcase slipping from my grip. David's voice low and tense, and another man's unfamiliar, deeper, carrying a tone that didn't belong in our home. I slipped off my shoes and moved closer, pressing myself against the wall where the hallway opened toward the living room. From there, I could see shadows shifting under the lamplight, their figures moving just out of my direct line of sight. "You owe him," the stranger said, his voice sharp, almost threatening. "I know," David replied quickly, his words clipped. "I just need more time. Time? The man let out a short, humorless laugh. "Silverman doesn't care about your excuses." 12 million, David. That was the deal. "You don't pay. You don't get to walk away." My heart nearly stopped. 1.5 million, Silverman. I had never heard that name before, but the way the stranger said it made my skin crawl. David's tone shifted, desperate now. "I'll get it. Just give me a week. I can move some money, sell some assets." "He doesn't need to worry. You don't make promises to George, Silverman you can't keep." The man snapped. "Because if you fail, you won't be the only one paying the price." The threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I pressed my hand against my mouth to keep from gasping. Out loud. David, my David, owing money to a man like that, a crime boss, a debt of $1.5 million. It sounded unreal, like something out of a gangster film, not the life of the man I married. I edged back slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. I didn't want them to know I was home. I needed to think to process what I had just heard. Every instinct screamed at me to run into that room, demand answers, shake the truth out of David right there. But the memory of that stranger's voice, cold, dangerous, held me still. So I stayed silent, hidden, my body pressed flat against the wall, my breath shallow, straining to hear every word. Because whatever was happening in that living room was bigger, darker than anything I had ever imagined about my husband's life. And for the first time in 15 years, I realized I might not know the man I married at all. The next morning, David moved around the house as if nothing had happened. He made coffee, scrolled through his phone, adjusted his tie in front of the mirror. His calmness was unnerving, almost insulting, as though I had only imagined the conversation with that stranger. I wanted to scream at him, to demand the truth, but I bit my tongue. The words of the fortune teller still echoed in my head. "Check your husband and you'll see the truth." When David finally stepped into the shower, I saw my chance. I went into our bedroom, my hands trembling as I pulled one of his shirts from the closet. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Proof, reassurance, anything to make sense of what I'd overheard. My eyes fell to the silver needle resting inside my purse. I hesitated. It felt ridiculous, almost childish, but something in me whispered to try. I ran the point of the needle gently along the seams of his shirt, dragging it across. The stitching like I was unraveling a secret. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the fabric gave way with a faint tear. Asterisk, my heart leapt into my throat. I reached inside and pulled out a tiny plastic packet sewn into the lining. Inside were several small pills, pale and crystalline, and a folded slip of paper with a phone number scrolled in red ink. My hands went cold. These weren't vitamins or aspirin. This was something else, something that didn't belong in a suburban home, tucked away in a husband's shirt like a hidden treasure. I stared at the pills, horror crawling through me. Suddenly, I heard the bathroom door open. David emerged. Towels. Slung around his waist, water dripping from his hair, his eyes locked on the packet in my hand. For a split second, his face drained of color. "What are you doing with that?" he demanded, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard. "I should be asking you," I shot back, my fingers tightening around the packet. "What is this, David? Why was it hidden in your shirt?" He crossed the room, quickly snatching the packet from me with a practiced motion. "It's nothing," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Just supplements, neuropics, smart drugs. Everyone in finance takes them these days to stay sharp." I glared at him, unable to believe the casual way he said it. "Smart drugs hidden in your shirt? Are you serious? You expect me to believe that?" David sighed heavily, running a hand through his damp hair. "Veronica, please. You're overreacting. You always do this. Take something small and blow it out of proportion. I'm under a lot of stress at work, and these just help me focus." That's all, but his eyes betrayed him. I could see it in the way he wouldn't meet my gaze. The way his hands shook ever so slightly as he shoved the packet into his briefcase. He wasn't telling the truth. I wanted to press him harder, to rip open the rest of his shirts and search every seam, but fear stopped me. Fear of what else I might find. Fear of confirming what my heart already suspected. David kissed me on the cheek as he grabbed his keys, his smile too smooth, too deliberate. "Don't worry so much," he said lightly, as if we hadn't just stared at each other over a bag of hidden drugs. Then he walked out the door, leaving me alone in the silence of our bedroom. I sank onto the bed, the silver needle still in my hand, my pulse racing. I had found the first crack in his carefully constructed facade, and it terrified me because if David could lie so easily about this, then what else was he hiding? By late afternoon, I could feel the tension in the house thickening. Like smoke, David paced the living room, his tie loosened, his phone clutched in his hand as if it were an anchor. He hadn't mentioned the pills, hadn't acknowledged the confrontation that morning. Instead, he kept muttering about meetings, deadlines, liquidity issues. His words were frantic, rehearsed, and meaningless. Then came the knock. Heavy, deliberate, nothing like a neighbor's polite tap. I froze in the kitchen listening. David straightened his shoulders, took a deep breath, and opened the door. The man I'd overheard the night before stood there, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit that didn't hide the menace in his posture. His eyes flicked past David and landed on me for just a moment, cold and assessing, before returning to my husband. "You've got until the end of the week," he said flatly. His voice was deep, measured, and carried the weight of someone who never had to repeat himself. Silverman doesn't like waiting. 1.5 million, David. That was the deal. If you don't deliver, it won't just be your problem anymore. I gripped the counter to steady myself, my chest tightening with panic. The man's words made my blood run cold. $1.5 million. How could David possibly owe that much? David's voice shook as he responded. "I'll get it, I swear. I just need a little more time." I can move things around." The man cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Time's run out. End of the week. No more excuses." He turned and walked away without another word, his footsteps echoing down the front path like a countdown. David shut the door and leaned against it, his hand pressed to his forehead. He didn't even look at me. For a long moment, the only sound in the house was the ticking of the clock on the wall. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. Part of me was too afraid of what I might hear. That night, I barely touched my dinner. David sat across from me, pushing food around his plate, his face drawn and pale. He tried to offer me a strange smile, muttered something about work stress, but his eyes gave him away. He was unraveling when the sun set and the neighborhood quieted. I sat by the bedroom window, staring out at the street below. The suburban calm felt like a cruel disguise, a thin mask over something dangerous lurking in the shadows. It happened. Just after 10, I heard the rumble of an engine, low and deliberate, and then the crunch of tires on our driveway. My heart lurched. A black SUV rolled to a stop outside our house, its tinted windows reflecting nothing but darkness. I rushed to the window, peeking through the curtains. 4 men got out, broad, armed, moving with military precision. My pulse hammered in my ears. David must have heard it too. He appeared in the hallway, his face drained of all color. He looked at me just for a second, as if he wanted to say something, maybe even apologize, but the words never came. The men pounded on the door. This time, David didn't resist. He opened it slowly, his hands raised slightly in surrender. "Mr. Miller," one of them said, almost politely, "you're coming with us." Before I could move, before I could scream, they surrounded him, guiding him firmly but not gently down the steps. "Wait," I whispered to myself. My hand pressed against the cold glass of the window, but I didn't dare go outside. I couldn't. They shoved him into the back of the SUV, Mrs. Miller. "My name is Stan Russian," he said smoothly. "I worked with your husband. I was his handler." The words hit me like a jolt. Handler. So David's video hadn't been a lie. My throat tightened. Stan gestured for me to sit. "I know you must be overwhelmed. David was deep undercover for years. The things he did, the things he sacrificed, you have no idea. But what you saw on that video was true. He was one of us and he was very, very good at it." I searched his face, trying to read the sincerity in his eyes. "If that's true, then why is he gone? Why did they take him?" Stan's expression hardened. "Because you can't just walk away from Silverman." David tried, but they caught on. Now we're trying to figure out how to get him back before it's too late. That's why I need that USB. It has the evidence we need to finish this. My hand tightened around my bag under the table. Something about his eagerness unsettled me. The way he leaned forward, the way his eyes flicked to my purse as though he already knew where it was, and then faintly in my ear. Andy's voice crackled. Through the small earpiece the agents had given me earlier. Veronica listened to me carefully. "Don't trust him. He's the mole." The blood drained from my face. My gaze snapped back to Stan, who was still talking, his voice calm, persuasive, rehearsed. A mole. If Andy was right, then the man sitting across from me wasn't here to help. He was here to finish what Silverman had started. I forced a shaky smile, nodding as if I believed every word. But inside, panic clawed at my chest. Who was telling the truth? David in his desperate video, Stan with his steady, confident voice, or Andy whispering warnings from the shadows. For the first time since this nightmare began, I realized I was no longer just a bystander. I was holding something everyone wanted. And no matter what, I chose to believe someone was going to pay the price. Stan kept talking, his tone calm and steady as if every word was meant to soothe me into surrender, but the unease in my gut wouldn't fade. My fingers twitched around the strap of my purse with a USB and silver needle were hidden. I tried to focus on his words, but my eyes kept darting around the room, looking for something, anything that might confirm or deny his story. That's when I saw it. On the corner of his desk, half hidden beneath a stack of files, was a glossy photo. My breath caught in my throat. It was David, handcuffed, bruised, a man's hand gripping his shoulder. My stomach lurched. But something about it was wrong. Too clean, too staged. I reached out before I could stop myself, pulling the photo free. Stan stiffened, but didn't stop me. Up close, I saw what my gut had already suspected. The edges were off. The background behind David was a flat green, poorly blurred out. My husband hadn't been photographed in a cell. He'd been pasted onto one. I looked up, my voice trembling. This is fake. Why would you show me this? The mask slipped. Stan's smile disappeared, his eyes narrowing into something cold and predatory. He rose slowly from his chair, his hand moving to his jacket. In a flash, he pulled a gun and leveled it at me. You should have just handed over the drive, he said. His voice stripped of all pretense. Would have been easier for both of us. My heart hammered, my mouth dry. I clutched my purse tighter, every muscle in my body screaming to move, but frozen by the sight of that weapon. Then chaos erupted. The door behind me slammed open and the room filled with shouting. Drop your weapon. Agents in tactical gear stormed in, rifles raised. Stan didn't drop his gun. Instead, he lunged toward me, seizing my arm and dragging me close. The barrel pressed hard against my temple. Nobody moves, he roared, using me as a shield. I gasped, my pulse racing so fast I thought I'd pass out. The agents froze, their guns trained, but hesitant. Stan's breath was hot against my ear, his grip like iron. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was survival. Maybe it was the memory of that fortune teller's voice whispering that the needle would reveal the truth. My hand dove into my purse. My fingers closed around the cold, sharp silver. Without thinking, I swung it backward with all the strength I had. The point of the needle drove deep into his chest. Stan let out a strangled gasp, his grip loosening. I wrenched free just as the agent surged forward. Shots firing, shouts filling. The room. The world became a blur of noise and movement. Glass shattering, men shouting, the accurate sting of gunpowder filling the air. I stumbled to the corner, clutching the needle slick with his blood, my body shaking uncontrollably. Across the room, Stan collapsed, his gun clattering to the floor as agents swarmed over him. The needle finds the heart, I whispered, the words escaping me before I even realized I was speaking. The chaos subsided, the gunfire ceased, and the agents secured the scene. But I stood there frozen, staring at the silver needle in my trembling hand. It had started as a strange trinket, a bizarre gift from a stranger at an airport. Now it was a weapon, a lifeline, the only thing that had saved me from becoming another one of Silverman's casualties. And in that moment, I understood the needle wasn't just meant to reveal the truth. It was meant to pierce it, no matter how dark or deadly it turned out to be. When the gunfire stopped, the room felt hollow, stripped of air. Agents moved quickly, securing weapons, cuffing Stan as he writhed on the floor, blood seeping through his shirt. He was alive but beaten. His eyes found mine as they dragged him upright, and for the first time I saw the truth in them, not power, not control, but fear. I stood frozen against the wall, the silver needle still clenched in my hand, my knuckles white. One of the agents gently guided me to a chair, his voice calm. Practice. You're safe now, Mrs. Miller. We've got him safe. The word rang hollow because even with Stan in custody, nothing felt resolved. He was only one piece of a larger puzzle, and the picture still didn't make sense. Back at the field office, Andy met me with a grave expression. He didn't congratulate me or tried to comfort me. Instead, he placed the USB on the table between. US, this drive has enough evidence to put Silverman away for life, he said. But it still doesn't answer the question you're afraid to ask. I stared at the flash drive. Its small, unassuming shape, hiding a weight that could crush an empire. My hands trembled as I traced the edges of it, remembering David's face in the video, his desperate confession, his pleas for me to believe him. Was he really an undercover agent who had fallen too deep? Or had he been a criminal all along, spinning one last lie to cover his tracks, and he seemed to read my thoughts? Veronica, I want to believe him, I really do. But the truth is, we don't. No, not yet. Those words shattered something inside me. For 15 years, I had built my life around this man. Shared meals, vacations, holidays, quiet nights on the couch, laughter, fights, forgiveness. The daily rhythm of a marriage that felt ordinary, even comforting. And now, standing in the ruins, I couldn't tell what had been real and what had been performance. Memories crowded in, sharp and bittersweet. The way David used to bring me flowers on Fridays, the nights he stayed out late, always with an excuse. The moments he held me close after my mother's funeral, when his comfort had felt so solid, so genuine. Were those moments truth, or lies told with enough conviction to feel real? I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to hold back tears. I don't know who my husband is anymore, I whispered. Andy's voice softened. Then the only thing you can do is prepare yourself for both answers. One will break your heart. The other might break your trust forever, but either way, you'll survive it. His words didn't soothe me. They only deepened the ache in my chest. That night, alone in the guest quarters they provided, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The silver needle rested on the knitstand beside me, catching the dim light. I thought of the fortune teller at O'Hare, her piercing eyes her warning. The needle had led me here to truths I wished I'd never uncovered. And as I drifted between exhaustion and grief, one thought kept echoing in my mind. If I couldn't trust the man I had shared my life with, then who could I trust at all? The next morning, Andy met me in the briefing room. The USB drive lying between us like a ticking bomb. His expression was tired, drawn, but resolute. We'll keep digging, he promised. The evidence on here will go a long way toward dismantling Silverman's network. But as for David, he paused, searching for words that wouldn't cut as deep. We can't confirm his status yet. He may have been an agent. He may have gone rogue. Until we know for sure. All we have are possibilities. I nodded, though the words landed like stones in my chest. Possibilities? That was all my marriage had become. 15 years of love and laughter reduced to a question mark no one could erase. The agents escorted me back to the safe house later that day. The city outside buzzed with its usual rhythm. Cars honking, trains screeching, people rushing to work. But it all felt distant, muffled, as though I was watching life through glass. Inside the quiet room, I sat alone at the small table, the silver needle in my hand. I turned it over slowly, the metal catching the light, sharp and unyielding. I remembered the woman at O'Hare, her piercing eyes, her strange accent, her words that had haunted me ever since. The needle will reveal the truth, no matter how bitter. At the time, it sounded like nonsense, a cryptic message from a stranger. Now it felt like prophecy. The needle had torn open the seams of David's carefully constructed life, spilling secrets I never asked to see. It had led me through deception, danger, betrayal, and ultimately to the realization that nothing is more terrifying than the truth. I thought about David's face in the video, the way his voice cracked when he told me he loved me. I thought about the hidden pills, the menacing visits, the SUV that swallowed him whole. I thought about every night we had spent together, every memory now tainted by doubt. But beneath the grief, beneath the anger, something else had taken root, a steel I hadn't known I possessed. For years I had been blind, accepting half answers, overlooking late nights, excusing every inconsistency. That woman at the airport hadn't just given me a needle. She had forced me to open my eyes. Whether David was an agent or a traitor, whether our marriage had been truth or illusion, no longer mattered as much as it once had, because I was no longer the woman who lived in his shadow. I lifted the needle, its point glinting like a shard of ice, and whispered to myself, I'm ready to face whatever comes. For the first time since this nightmare began, the fear didn't consume me. It lingered, yes, but beneath it was resolve. I didn't know what the future held, answers, heartbreak, or maybe more questions. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't the same woman who had missed her flight at O'Hare. And whatever truth the needle revealed next, I would be ready to meet it head on.